reality? Seeing the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 1. A lot of couples walking in. This is the first time in my life I ever thought if I was someone's boyfriend, I'd be the worst boyfriend ever, because if my girlfriend was like, can we go see Twilight? I'd be like, no. I'm just kidding. I would be a great boyfriend. So anyway, I'd like to preface this review by saying that it could have spoilers in it. I could offend some twihards in this review. I don't want to. It's not my intention to directly offend fans of something. This is a typical objective review, yet I know that Twilight's kind of a sensitive subject, and it's really interesting because Twilight seems to bring up very strong positive emotions and very strong negative emotions out of people, which always makes for an interesting topic and point of discussion. Another warning, this video could get a little long today. I have a lot of opinions about Twilight, and I think this is going to be a cathartic experience for me, maybe, I'm hoping. So I'd like to give a little background of my relationship with this series as well, because I think that'll give my review even more of a foundation. I might even end up making it 2 parts. I'm really not sure what I'm going to do yet, but it could just be one long video, but hopefully you'll watch it anyway. Introduction to it was through seeing a very first trailer for the very first Twilight movie. It was a quick teaser trailer. It was something going on in the woods. I remember exactly where I saw it. I saw it in front of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That is the movie that it played before. After I saw it, it sparked my interest immediately, and I thought, hey, this Twilight thing looks really interesting. I think I should check this out. So shortly after that, I was in my local bookstore, and they had a little bit of a setup for it, and I think the first 3 books were out by that time. Here's the deal. I very much enjoyed the first 2 books of this series. I really liked the protagonist, which is, as I'm sure any of you who have seen any of the films know, is her name is Bella Swan, and I was digging her as a character. I really liked the second book. I liked it even more, to be honest, because I really started to enjoy the Native American werewolf aspect. I know that people knock this series immediately, a lot of the sci-fi or fantasy monster purists, I suppose, because the vampires do really lame things. The werewolf stuff really is not that cool. But I have to defend the books in the sense that there was some interesting things going on in the books themselves. There were some interesting and fresh, what I feel were fresh concepts. What stood out to me the most, just personally, was that I liked the werewolf thing being interwoven with this Native American culture. I'm really interested in Native American culture, so I guess that had something to do with it. And I'm sure that, I don't know if that's an original concept, I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying the way she was presenting it I thought was pretty interesting. And in the second book, if you've seen the movie or whatever, Edward is gone in that book, and it's about the relationship between Jacob and Bella. And I thought it was a pretty interesting relationship. I thought there was some real legitimacy to it. I could feel something from that relationship. You were feeling the things that I feel you're supposed to feel, that the author wanted you to feel. So it was successful. When things started to go wrong for me was in the 3rd book, and I just started to have some issues with it. I felt like the author was starting to wander off. I didn't, at that point, understand the direction of the story anymore. I kind of just wasn't feeling it. I was a little confused as to where we were going with all this, but in my mind, I had an expectation. My expectation was that something really interesting was going to happen to this protagonist that I did, in the book form, care about and wanted something interesting to happen to her. I wanted some kind of point to be made. I mean, by that point, you're hearing about more and more young readers picking up these books and really falling in love with them. And I just was starting to picture all of these. I believed in the author to that extent. I am not a fan of hers now, but that has to do with how the series ended, and that is exactly the point I'm trying to make. When I received the last book, and I read through the last book, I mean, pretty much as you saw in the film, right away, I knew that I was done, pretty much, because of what happens with Bella and Edward getting married. I mean, basically, after she gets married, all of the suspense and all of the intrigue that once existed, where you thought interesting things could happen for this female lead, could not be pretty much anymore. But I kept with it. Of course, I finished the book, and just had some kind of shred of hope throughout it that somehow this story would turn around and something would come out of it, some interesting point would be made, and this character that I thought was a pretty solid character would develop in an interesting way and speak to the readers. Throughout that last book, my sentiments were, it just kept getting more and more bizarre. It's like, I don't understand. Like, how could you bomb a story like this, like, into the ground? That is how I took it. I was like, I feel like I got duped by this author. That is honestly how I feel. I know that might be really dramatic or sound like, oh, get over it, it's just a book, whatever. But she got me invested, and then totally, like, I felt like screwed the readers over by basically, I feel like the quick way of me putting it, I feel like there's more to it than this, but I think really, like, the crux of it, that Bella is a lame character. She's so lame as a character in the end. There's nothing there. I mean, there was no point to the story. There was nothing that comes out of it. It's hollow. It's a hollow story. There's nothing for you to get out of it. There's nothing touching about it, I felt. I agree that certain stories exist purely to be a romantic tale, you know, not some epic, doesn't have to be some epic point made in the end, like in Harry Potter, which has a multitude and a variety of points being made. I feel one of the main things being finding the strength to face death, basically, and not being afraid of it and facing your fears. I think that's a big one. And I'm not saying that this book had to have that, but if you're going to do an epic romance tale, and that's going to be the big ending of the story, that these two characters get together, you have to be like, you have to want those two characters to be together so bad that you get that huge catharsis. And for any Twilight fan who's gonna click on this video, I'm honestly even scared to post this because I don't want the Twihards to come after me and say, how could you say this, you know, how could you not feel anything for Edward and Bella and the whole story? How could you not be invested in it? How could you not understand it? You must not like love stories. One of my favorite movies of all time is Titanic. And Titanic is actually like a really, really good comparison, and I'm glad I thought of it because I know a lot of you watching this might not have watched that movie in a long time. Give it another shot. Put it back in, and I have a strong feeling that you'll still really like dig it and feel that excitement that a lot of people felt when that movie first came out. But if you think about it, why did people like Titanic so much? Why was it one of the most popular love story, epic tales in cinematic history? It's not just because it's positioned, these two characters are positioned against an extremely interesting, catastrophic event in human history. But the thing is, it would not have been what it was if people weren't invested in the two characters. But the two, with their chemistry, don't you remember that feeling of like, oh, you want them to be together so bad, and at the end you're just like, couldn't she just have shifted over a little bit on that piece of wall or whatever it was that she was floating on? Like, couldn't she just have moved over a little bit? I want you to meet somebody. One of the most famous and significant novelists of the early 19th century, written some of the most epic amazing love stories that you will ever know of. So please, I implore you to go find some Jane Austen stories and read them. It is classic, beautiful literature with always interesting and intriguing points about relationships. Sure, it was hundreds of years ago now, sure, but somehow her stories still ring true and wonderfully to this very day. Yes, I have a Jane Austen action figure with action desk with action desk and quill